Ooh, what a day. What a day. It's summertime. Wow, not a good day to start my very first. All right, gotta take these off. A little bit of grounding here. All right, all right, all right. Woohoo! Boom. Hey, what's up, everybody? Big E here, and I am stoked. Why, you might ask? Because I'm on Big E TV, Facebook Live, and we are going here on Mindset Monday, July 8th, 2019. A very special day, a very important day for me, as we're going to bring you some good stuff. I got the vegan meatball topic of the day. What would I do if I was Prime Minister of Canada? What would you do? I'd love to hear your comments, so feel free to join the conversation. And in the meantime, we're going to get started here. I'm going to sit this down here, move this up like that. Boom. All right, all right. Woohoo! It's nice to see the sun out again. All right, I was at the commercial-free, car-free day, a commercial drive, car-free day yesterday, and it was a good time. Enjoyed myself. Unfortunately, the weather was kind of a little bit rainy, and so, you know, Vancouver's a very fair-weathered city. It's amazing how so many people get turned off when that happens. But happy summer, one and all. Hey, Vera K, nice to see you on the call. Tonight's vegan meatball of the day. What would you do if you were elected as the 24th Prime Minister of Canada? John Connors, what would you do if you were the Prime Minister of Canada? Vera K, I know you've got some ideas. Stay positive. So Mark Zuckerberg, if you're listening, Facebook, okay, I'm going to be talking about what would I do if I was Prime Minister one day. Okay, just saying. Messing around with me. I'm not. Facebook hasn't been allowing me to download my Facebook Lives. Like, it's my content, so once you kind of have a privilege and you have it taken away, people don't like that very much. They gave it back to me as of yesterday, so we'll see what's going to happen there. Eric Brodkin, Michigan, what's up, brother? Okay. Anyway, good news is, for now, we live in a democracy, okay? We have freedom of speech. I'm able to come on here. If this was China or many other nations around the world that I'm noticing, it's becoming more totalitarian in scope. You know, that whole 1984 George Orwell kind of Orwellian prediction. And fortunately, we are, for now, still able to have somewhat degree of this kind of social media conversation. So for that, Shelly Giggy, T.O., I am very appreciative. Thank you. Okay, and before we begin, a heartfelt shout out to my friend Jacob Hopkins. Okay, he corrected me on my assertion that it was not, in fact, Jalen Rose that picked the Raptors, the Toronto Raptors, to win the NBA championships in 6 games. It was, in fact, Max Kellerman and Paul Pierce of ESPN. And good news, Facebook, finally allowing me to do this. Okay, we did that. Okay, so I was going to say no slapdowns today to Facebook, and then all of a sudden I realized that our top story, another Big E TV slapdown. I had done this in advance. This time, too funny. This time it was to who else? Come down hard on drug dealers, says John Connors. What the heck? Okay, looks like we got a Filipino president fan in the house there. Okay. Canada's very own state TV, the CBC, as they continue to integrate propaganda, which is ironic because it's the same kind of propaganda that RT Russia uses, like the same style of propaganda, you know, where it's fed to us like it's, you know, factual information, when in effect it's like this whole subcurrent of an election year and all of this, you know, image building and subtle this and subtle that. Okay, we got comments coming in here for the... We're not there yet, Vera, okay? We're not there yet, but I'll get to your comments in a minute, okay? The way that the CBC writes these puff pieces, these touchy-feeling odes to their fearless leader, Justin Trudeau, as this fall election nears, And a referendum, I think, is due on what I would call pathetic leadership, okay? Folks, when I was younger, my mom, thanks to my mom and dad, I partied with these guys like Justin Trudeau at their royal mansion. What do they call that in Rideau there? It's called the Governor General's Ball and all that stuff, you know? And these guys are silver spoon fed from ground zero, okay? The guys like Justin Trudeau, they have no concept of real life, real people, what it's like out there, okay? They have lived in this bubble just like the Trumps, okay? Ivana Trump and Eric Trump and, you know, all of the Trumpies there. What was the other one? I'm missing a bunch of them. Those guys have no business being in these power positions of authority in our country. They have no friggin' idea what it's like to be just a regular person in real life, living with what they've got, how things are now. Anyway, did I call this one sound off or what? Oh my goodness. Anyway. It's like Game of Thrones. If there's any Game of Thrones fans out there, okay, the best leaders are not the leaders that come from this aristocracy of the wealthy and the elite, okay, which is basically what large corporations and wealthy donors hijacking our democratic political processes, which we call elections, is happening right now. So we end up getting all these jackasses that don't even know what it really means to give a hard day's work out there, okay? So we have got, if you look at the Game of Thrones, right, who are the great leaders? The noble ones, the ones that are men of the people, that are out there fighting and willing to die for their country, okay? These are the guys that are the true gladiators, the warriors, and the greatest of the great should be anointed to be the leader of your great nation, like we call Canada, okay? So all week long, okay, here's my rant. All week long last week, the CBC ran basically a pre-election series highlighting different groups, okay? They talked just general adult groups, so, you know, us white folks don't say we want a white pride parade. John Connor says liberals only option, however. Okay, really? All right, John. Well, I'm going to dispute that. Adult groups, immigrant groups, millennial groups. In each case, you know, they either were the lead story or right close to the lead story, except on the Thursday, the last day, they kind of slid in the First Nations version of this, and it was buried at the very end of their near the end of their broadcast. And they just, unlike all the other ones, where earlier in the show, you know, when they start the show, they promote it's coming up later. There was no mention of this on the Thursday of the day of the show. It's almost as if they didn't want people to see the First Nations version of, you know, what do they feel about our election? Is that important? Should we care about them? Well, if you ask the CBC, evidently, they will want to care more about saying that they did something for them than actually doing it when you try to put it on the even. Just like with men and women, when you try to put things on the even Steven footings, it's amazing what a discrepancy you find. So what did we learn from this buried story? Okay, 1, less than 20% of Aboriginal folks say that Trudeau should keep his job, okay? 4 in 5 think that, hey, ho, ho, John Connors, Trudeau has got to go. Okay, another stat. 2 in 3 First Nations people do not feel respected by the federal government. 67%. Says Veldon Colburn, an assistant professor, Indigenous Studies, University of Ottawa, quote, "We've heard the word reconciliation repeated numerous times, almost at nausea, but we've seen gestures and actions that resemble past governments. Nothing has changed." Oh, and one more stat from state TV, CBC. When Aboriginal people were asked which federal leader or party they liked the most, what did their polling data show? Interesting. The CBC wouldn't say. So do you know what that means? That it must have been very pro-Jagmeet Singh, progressive New Democrats, pro-Elizabeth May, Green Party of Canada. But they wouldn't want to give them credit because they aren't the pro-corporate candidates that are the liberals and the conservatives that some of these guys evidently are still going to vote for, okay? But what they would tell you is 1/3 of Aboriginal people said that which federal leader or party they liked the most that the first thing that a third of them would say none of them. So see, when you get lemonade, when you get lemons, this make lemonade, says the CBC. And if it doesn't look good on your leader, don't report it. Just bypass that one. So you see how what they're doing here? John Connors, do you see what they're doing here? I mean, come on, man, wake up. Okay, our next story is a TED Talk, and this has more to do with macro thinking here. All right, hey Armin, nice to see you on the call. Okay, hang on, let's go. From economics, democracy, and the New World Order. This, according to Professor Danny Kwa, who was on a TED Talk that I saw. And he goes something like this. Most of the world agrees that we want a system that's fair, open, transparent, a system that practices meritocracy. All right? Meritocracy, we all know what that is, right? What is meritocracy, you might ask? Well, meritocracy basically comes from the word merit, meaning governments should be selected by the people on the basis of their abilities. Kind of like what we were just talking about with the Trumps and the Trudeaus, right? Right? 25 years ago, when the USSR collapsed, the thinking was two planks were considered to dominate the future of politics and economics. One is about liberal democracy, about how each man and woman gets an equal vote. And another one is about the free market, about how if you are transparent, that it will determine, if you remove all of the barriers, what they call, you know, these government regulations, and you just have the free market as possible, that you're going to determine your success on your failure depending on, you know, how good your business is or how hard you work or something like that, right? A system that was made to be self-correcting, flexible, able to adjust when disturbances shock the system. In 1970, only about 45 countries in the world were considered democracies. This is quite interesting. I didn't know this stuff. Well, by 2010, in the 40 years since, that number has pretty much tripled, which you would think that would be a step in the right direction. Which, yeah, who could argue with that? Countries with more freedoms, with democracies where you can vote. But then something happened around the financial crisis, September 2008, when Lehman Brothers collapsed, okay? And the U.S. subprime housing market defaulted. The world lurched into a global financial crisis as trillions of dollars of economic wealth evaporated overnight. Okay, over a 12-month period, okay, you're sitting down for this? 1/2 of the world's GDP collapsed. 1/2 of what the world labors to make. Okay, that you know, the equity disappeared. 1/2 of the world's GDP disappeared overnight. Free market capitalism has now been replaced by, now he said easy Nordstroms, which I didn't quite get. I tried to look that up. I didn't know what that term was. I don't know if he meant like quantitative easing related to the financial crisis, or he's talking about more of a corporate welfare, I think is more. He's saying like how the free markets build financial institutions, okay? See if this sounds familiar. As soon as this big guy passes me here. Good time to take a break. All right, here. I am in New Westminster, beautiful British Columbia. I'm going to be heading out to the Paddle Wheeler Pub on Friday, 6 p.m. for a social there. I hope you guys, if you're in town, come down and say hi to Big E, okay? Free market capitalism replaced by easy Nordstroms, I don't know, corporate welfare. Like how free markets build financial institutions that are said to have become too big to fail, only to see that our governments bail them out. Right? You see what's happening here? So, for example, you've heard about the old one about give a man a fish and he will eat for a day. Teach him how to fish and he will eat for a lifetime, right? We've all heard that one. Well, he uses the one, okay, give a man a gun and he can rob a bank. Give a man a bank and he can rob the world. I could say a few things right now about Canadian chartered banks, but I'm going to stay on cue here. So, what about liberal democracy? Well, the world's most autocratic system, China, okay, which means centrally controlled system, will imminently be replacing the U.S. as the world's largest economy. Okay, did you know that? China polled 627 million people, more than 115 democracies did over 100 years, out of poverty, okay? So China, with one swoop of the economic cycle, have pulled more people out of poverty, raised them, than 100 years of 115 democracies. So who saved the total collapse of the world financial system? China. This is this TED Talk I'm giving here, so I'm going to hopefully back it up with some facts here. Okay, Professor Kawhi says that the world's economic center of gravity has shifted in the last 25 years, away from middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So if you think about G8 countries and where the epicenter would be somewhere between, New York and London kind of thing, okay? And towards the Middle East and towards China and the rise of East Asia, India, and of course, Korea, Japan's always been there, and Philippines are an up-and-coming nation, and Malaysia's got a massive population, Indonesia. So, Professor Kwan's summary statement is, the notion of being a liberal democracy has become a catchphrase for everything that we don't have, but that we want to have. And to say liberal democracy should be making our governments insecure. Every day our government action should be constructed based on the will of our people to serve our people. Okay, this is the heat of the meat, folks, about what it means to be a liberal democracy. Okay, where a government is not in bed with big business and billionaire wealthy donors. Okay, every day our governments should act in our best interest, construct our society, including our economy, our environmental issues, our First Nations issues, all of the people's issues like LGBT and QQ and New Canadians, and all people, to serve and protect our interests, not the interests of large corporations and billionaires. Okay, each year the people of China, I added a little bit into Professor Kwan's thing, by the way. Every year the people of China expect their government will grow the economy by 10%. That is liberal democracy, okay? The people of China expect their economy to grow by 10% every year. That's massively more than what we have, okay? Now, I should be a caveat here. I'm not saying that I'm a proponent of China. And of course, I started this show by saying I love the fact that I can have the freedom to be able to speak my mind and sound off a bit, whereas there's many nations in the world I could not do that. However, when it comes to the economics of the matter, okay, if you compare a centrally controlled economy like China versus a free market capitalist system like we have now, what ends up happening is that this system over on the China side is much more efficient, because you can get partnership with business where you're all firing at all cylinders, where everyone's benefiting because the government sees the wealth that's going to help the people as well. On this side of the equation, you've got greed and profit and a few egotistical maniacs that don't give an F about anything other than, you guessed it, profit. And when profit is your underlying value or principle, then guess what? You've got no values or principles. Yeah. Yet for some reason, we continue to bring in these people into our power positions in politics. Valis Kapelia, what is her name? Vasi Kapelios. Anyway, interesting here, summary statement here for Dr. Kwan was that if liberal democracy means you serve the majority of the needs of your stakeholders, well, guess what? Over half of the world's population exists in only 1/6 of our land mass. And it has nothing to do with in Canada or the US or in Germany or England, but over on the Asia side of the equation, okay? Yet for 50 years, okay, half a century, the US has been given this self-label of global leader because economically, their wealth that has been created traditionally in the US was about half of the world's, okay? So for example, I was in the fitness industry, and for every dollar that was spent on fitness equipment purchased in the US, dollar of fitness equipment was purchased everywhere else in the entire world. Okay, so that should give you an idea of just the power at one time of the U.S. economy. And quite frankly, I'm actually relieved that we have a USA-China, balancing act where we have two superpowers, because when you have one superpower, like after the fall of the USSR, I'm sure that the Illuminati, that these guys that kind of run things at the highest level of they've got it all figured out. I'm sure they've seen the end of time, and it's just a matter of time before global warming gets to the point where it's so friggin' hot and so desert-like here, where that the large you're going to have to pay to protect yourself against the elements of global warming. We're already seeing that today, but ultimately I think that's where they've sort of done the calculations. It's just a matter of time before human self-greed, basically perpetuates this to the next level. But for 50 years, the U.S. has been given this label, but they've never been elected for this label as being the leader of the free world. So it's not really a liberal democracy. What it is a financial I can't put those two words together. Okay, basically money talks and bullshit walks, I think, is the moral of that story. And guess what? China will soon be bigger in economic size, GDP, than the US, okay? It's on its way, which suggests that liberal democracy on its way. Finally, after all these years. Professor Kwan ends his TED Talk by suggesting that the globally important issues, if we truly want to live in a liberal democracy, should be decided in his region where he was at. I think he was in Kuala Lumpur at the time, and of that, Asia, South Asia region, not by the members of the G8, like the USA, the UK, Canada, Germany, Italy, France, Spain. Who am I missing here? Brazil? Australia? I don't know. Okay, moving on. Facebook Community Matters. I have this from Cheryl McGarger from Coquitlam. Gambling, casinos, money laundering, overinflated real estate in Metro Vancouver, inflated gas prices, inflated hydro prices. I guess we can thank our, she didn't say previous Liberal government, for making BC unaffordable for the average working taxpayer. Thanks a lot, Christy Clark, I would add to that. Cheryl is from Coquitlam. After I forwarded a post from my mom on yet another BC Liberal, borderline corruption being investigated right now by the current government, where they where the former right-wing Liberal government sold out the province to privatized energy companies. Okay, in releasing the report, former BC Treasury Board Director Ken Davidson, Minister Michelle McGall said, quote, "This is the type of thing the BC Liberals have done. They let our rich friends get away with British Columbians' dollars, and it's BC that has to pay. If we had not gone into these private power schemes, people would be paying $200 less on their hydro bills right now." So she went on. There was a big story with all these different things. I'll just take one example of a thing happened. Okay, independent power producers. Okay, 3 of them specifically in Edmonton. They were selling clean or green energy to BC Hydro. Well, they were found to have a net profit margin 26.8% compared to the rest of the typical percentage of those margins is less than 8%. So 8 to 20, 3 times 20. So more than 3 times more the going rate, okay? Just to give you an example of just how we were getting screwed. So badly, in fact, that unbelievable, an alumnus of the Fraser Institute, the friggin' Fraser Institute, okay, then Vancouver Sun editorial page editor, Fazil Millar, scolded the BC Liberal and right-wing Ontario governments for, quote, model calling the pigs at the trough. I would choose to give a bear hug to those business folks who try to meet consumer needs without fleecing taxpayers, and dismiss entrepreneurs who use the power of the state to get a slice of the pie and pig out on taxpayers' subsidies. And keep in mind, folks, this is from the Fraser Institute, okay? An organization that takes in millions of dollars from guys like David Koch, Charles Koch, you might have heard of Koch Industries. These are the worst enemies of the environment in the entire planet. shall we say, universe? Am I being too dramatic there? And I also remember a while back with Fraser Institute warning us about the massive problems they had if our middle class continued to shrink at such an alarming rate. So our middle class is shrinking at such an alarming rate, okay? We're getting a few more millionaire, billionaire types, and we're getting a lot more people pushed down into working class, you know, and poverty status, okay? This is the benefit of the few at the expense of the many. This is the opposite of how the democratic system should work, but I'll be giving you some solutions here about what we can do to make that better. Whew. Okay, tomorrow, I've got a nice exchange here. Facebook community member Dale Donaldson. Dale was a guy I ski raced with in Nelson, whitewater ski racers back in the day. He's a conservative guy a little bit, I think, but he's also got a brain and he's got a heart. He's not afraid to use them. And I don't mind talking to conservative folks, right? As long as it doesn't get into a shouting match where you're insulting one another. And it's okay to have different views, and it's okay to talk about politics, okay? This idea that our whole society has been socially engineered away from having stimulating dialogue about these subjects, you know, like, oh, I just want to live in my bubble and I don't want to be disturbed because these things they get me too emotional and I get over, and then I don't enjoy myself and I have a bad day. Get over it, okay? Where's your self-confidence? Look yourself in the mirror, find out what's going on in there, okay? If you don't like yourself, if you love yourself, find it. Find your, you know, find your one thing that Curly talked about in City Slickers, okay? What is it that drives you, that makes you happy? And you're going to find that everything in your life is going to feel a lot better. Anyway, what am I talking about? I guess it is Mindset Monday. Okay. Moving on. Sports that matter. Women's sports that matter. USA. USA. What? Oh, what? Sorry, hang on. I'm getting something here. That's not USA. Oh, equal pay. Equal pay. That's what they were screaming after the USA 2, the Netherlands 0, as the US won their 4th and at least 2nd consecutive Women's World Cup. Oh, Canada. Oh, how you forsaken me. Well, we have our own self to blame, shoot ourselves in the foot. Why Christine Sinclair did not take that penalty shot for Canada that could have tied the game and put us to the next round, it's beyond me. Okay, interesting listening to a little bit about the two big corporate guys in the sport world that are on ESPN, Michael Wilbon, Tony Kornheiser. Kornheiser was saying in America, that got a 10 rating, the final, which is higher than many men's sports finals, like in Major League Baseball or some NBA finals games. Yet, the women only make 1/3 of what the men make. So, if most of their financial dollars come in through the media companies that, you know, eyeballs on the sport, if they're getting ratings at like a 10 rating, which is very good, you would think that they would be paid appropriately. So I think they have a great point. As for the final itself, I'm sorry to my American friends. I don't want to sound like sour grapes here, but let's face it. It was another manufactured win, okay? I mean, they got a goal on a penalty kick because, I'm not saying it wasn't a penalty. Sometimes those things are, sometimes they aren't. But it sure seems like the U.S. gets an awful lot of calls. I specifically remember back in 2012 in London where you got a call that deprived us of going to the gold medal game by having some bogus call in the last few minutes of the game. And earlier in the rounds there where it was an obvious penalty, the gal stuck her arm out, the ball hit the arm, should have been a penalty kick, wasn't even reviewed by VAR. It's about money, folks. It's sport entertainment. So I get that. I just, I don't like the fact that the U.S., you know, when they win a World Cup, like, asterisk. And before we get into the whole Kawhi thing, okay, let's have some fun here. First is with the shot of the day, a new segment on Big E TV, the shot of the day. Okay, we were talking about Tony Kornheiser. He's the guy that dubbed Drake our Toronto Raptors mascot. Well, he had this to say about comparing Paul George to Kawhi and Kawhi's 2 championships and them playing together. quote, Paul George, who is not a champion at all, but as long as he doesn't have to take the last shot, you know, like with the game on the line, he shouldn't get exposed. What? What a burn. Oh my goodness. As long as Paul George doesn't have to take the last shot, he shouldn't get exposed. Fun fact, with less than 10 seconds left in the game, on the line, Paul George 1 for 23 in those situations. Yet, I was watching one of the last games he had in Indiana, and I was shocked to see him berate his teammate for taking the last shot instead of letting him take it after he had been going 1 for 22 in that situation. This is the kind of size egos these guys have. And a hilarious quote by everyone's favorite punching bag, DeMarcus Cousins, who was expecting to get his big payday this year. How many million am I getting? 100 million, 200 million? Well, folks, it's whittled down to the minimum 2.5 million, I believe. The minimum contract, DeMarcus Cousins, again, he got a little bit more than that with Golden State last year. He had this to say to ESPN's Rachel Nichols: I was just ready to quit. Like, throw in the towel. Human nature is the first thing. It's like, why? Why me? Why now? What did I do wrong? Why do I deserve this? And that's not always the case. It's usually that it's repaying you for the next moment. I'm not sure if he said that last part. Anyway, instead of finally getting paid what he thought he deserved, a $200 million Supermax contract, the permanently perpetual big man, DeMarcus Cousins, he saw his contract cut in half, the minimum wage with the Lakers. So, DeMarcus Cousins, if you're watching, why me? Why now? Why? What did I do wrong? What did I do to deserve this? Okay, well, the short answer is, and Kawhi Leonard, I hope you're listening, because karma is a bitch, okay? Let me break it down for you. So, why? Because injuries are a part of the game, and anybody with championship aspirations knows how it just takes one jackass on a team that can completely ruin team chemistry. You know what I mean? Why me? Well, I don't know you, DeMarcus, but every indication seems to point to you having many of the worst attributes of a typical prima donna, you know, spoiled, egotistically fed, insecure, negative attitude, whiny millionaire superstars. And these comments that you're making don't help change my mind very much on that, okay? Why now? Because the NBA game has changed, okay? The bigs that survive in this league, they must be able to switch out and hold their own defensively against quick guards. It's as simple as that. What did I do wrong? Okay, well, for starters, you got really heavy and really out of shape when you were injured. So when you, well, I mean, I understand. I'm not saying you didn't do the work and put in the time, but if you look at Draymond Green, you know, he wasn't even injured the second half of this last season, yet he decided to cut 30 pounds off his frame. And by cutting those 30 pounds, if you saw in the playoffs, Draymond Green was like all world out there. He was a flash flying up and down, okay? You did not look like that. In fact, I believe that the most commonly used term for you in the playoffs was elephant, that you look like an elephant out there. That's that kind of slow plodding, you know, weak link of the defense. You know, it was obvious the Raptors were basically attacking you at every possession. You know, what did I do wrong? Then some food for thought. Why do I deserve this? Well, to bring this conversation full circle, because karma is a bitch. Okay? In other words, you get what you deserve. You made your bed. Now you've got to sleep in it. If you haven't used enough of these yet, okay? And unfortunately, I hate to say it, because honestly, this is coming from a good place. Shifting over to Kawhi Leonard, but Kawhi, this applies to you too, okay? But for a very different reason, okay? Karma is a bitch, okay? So, if you're not a huge basketball fan, let me bring you up to speed. Kawhi Leonard, we traded for him last year in the Toronto Raptors. We, as in like we are all NBA champions in Canada now. And Masai Ujiri, Toronto Raptors, they got Kawhi Leonard, one of the greatest players in the game. He helped us win a championship with the Toronto Raptors, our first ever NBA championship for Toronto and for the citizens of Canada, the birthplace of basketball. And he went from having the worst year in his life in San Antonio, I don't know Kawhi, but I would believe that he would say that, to the best year of his life, you know, where it couldn't have gone better for him this year, to leaving that. I don't know. I think you're setting yourself up, man. Like, you had it pretty, like, great here. So to leave that, I don't begrudge you. I wish you all the best. Any young person or old person or any person that has enough success in their life that can take control and do what they want to do, where they want to live, who they want to be around, hey, all the power to you. So I wish you well, Kawhi. I think that, you know, you were an amazing part of our Canadian history. On behalf of Dr. J. Naismith, you know, he would be proud. So thank you for your service, sir. I just don't know that was the best decision, because you seem like a Zen guy, like the Zen masters over here. And I don't know that karma is going to be your best friend moving forward, but I hope I'm wrong. And that's from the heart, honestly. So, a couple of quotes here from legendary Houston Rockets coach Rudy Tomjanovich. Okay, never underestimate the heart of a champion. Okay, and another anonymous quote from an NBA general manager. I like this one. Continuity is the lost currency of the NBA. Okay, think about that. Continuity, the lost currency of the NBA. Now, the same commentary I've had since the Leonard Green trade. I've got 5 words for you basketball fans. In Masai, we must trust, okay? Masai Ujiri, president Toronto Raptors. He made that trade. I was so sad to see DeMarcus Cousins, Jacob Poeltl leave, but I believe in Masai Ujiri. Unbelievable how the whole system that is the ESPN marketing machine has like not soured on the Raptors, but just boom, it's like they don't exist. Okay, this is what I think that they should do to get better. With Giannis Antetokounmpo joined by his older brother Thanasis, which is a really cool name. It sounds like he used to be taking on some Avengers or something. They already have a brother combination, Pau Gasol, Robin Gasol. Okay, what about this? Mark Gasol, Pau Gasol, basketball royalty, you reunited with the Raptors. Please, Masai, be smart enough to see that Pau Gasol and Mark Gasol on your team, we can do it. The Raptors can win the NBA championships in 2020, and you heard it first here on Big E TV, okay? Of the remaining free agents available, of course, thanks to Kawhi's late decision, I'm not trying to Kawhi, but the reality is you kind of screwed us over and then everyone else is gone now, you know, but you didn't screw us over from the, just on that one issue, okay? But they should re-sign Patrick McCaw. I really like Patrick McCaw. I don't know why we wouldn't re-sign Patrick McCaw, other than the fact that other people like him a lot too, and he might get like a 3-year, $30 million contract from someone that he's a restricted free agent, so we would have to either match or let him go. It may be that he's got a higher value than we expect, but if at all possible, bring back Patrick McCaw. I thought Jody Meeks worked out well for us. Jonas Jerebko of the Golden State Warriors is still available, amazingly. He might be contemplating going back to Europe or something, but I would like to see that guy. Or if not Jonas Jerebko, how about this one? Canadian Trey Lyles from the Denver Nuggets. I don't know why we don't have Trey Lyles on our team in Toronto, although we do already have I wouldn't call him a token Canadian, because Chris from Montreal is a very good player too. But and if we can't get Pau Gasol, I would say for bigs, if we need a backup here to Gasol and Serge Ibaka. Kyle O'Quinn, I always like Kyle O'Quinn in Indiana, or re-sign Eric Moreland, who has the greatest name ever, and he fit in well with us last year. And again, he's got that championship pedigree of going through that experience. Anyone that's won championships at a high level knows that once you have that intellectual property of knowing what it takes to win a championship, you can win another. So, Masai Ujiri will manifest another trade of epic proportions, or at the very least, make the right moves to get us back into contention for a second NBA championship. And finally, what I mean by the NBA marketing machine, okay, ESPN is sleeping on the Raps. Today, they broke down the winners and losers and all this crazy offseason free agency, drafts, trades. They talked at length about Brooklyn, Lakers, Clippers, Brooklyn, friggin' Brooklyn. And then they go on. They talked at length and nausea about Philadelphia, Boston, New York, Utah, Denver, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Indiana. I don't know. What does Indy stand for? OKC, friggin' Oklahoma. Not one word about the reigning NBA world champions. Houston, Minnesota, Philadelphia again. Says ESPN, overwhelmed. Oh yeah, here finally the Raptors get mentioned by saying the 76ers overwhelmed opponents and unnerved the champion TO Raptors with sheer size and athleticism. Overwhelmed their opponents like the Toronto Raptors? That's funny because the last time I checked, Toronto won that round in the semifinals of the Eastern Conference, not Philadelphia. That's the only time they mentioned Toronto by dissing them about how the 76ers overwhelmed their opponents with sheer size and athleticism. Then they talk about Charlotte and they talk about friggin' Phoenix. A discussion around team success based on continuity. The continuity is a lost currency of the NBA if you've been paying attention, okay? Like in Toronto, but you wouldn't want to talk about Toronto in continuity, no. Houston, they talked about San Antonio, Denver. I mean, Houston is really good. Houston is really good. Too many discussions around the reloaded West. I've ignored the Rockets. Then they talked about Memphis, Chicago, Washington, New Orleans, and finally, last and least, Portland. My two favorite teams. One, they don't even talk about them. Two, they leave Portland for the very last. On ESPN's The Jump, Rachel Nichols, who's killing it out there. She's there with Zach Collins, Paul Pierce, who correctly said the Raptors were going to win the championship in 6 games. He and Max Kellerman got it right. A few other people out there. And Kyle Lowry, mentor Chancey Billups, okay? They discuss the NBA Eastern Conference. Who do they say? Milwaukee and Philadelphia, maybe Boston and Indy. That's it. In other words, folks, ESPN and basically all of corporate America was not pleased that a Canadian team won the NBA championship, to which I say, thank you very much, Adam Silver, okay? Thank you for your service. I'm not saying you did us any special favors beyond the fact that we are so used to getting screwed in Canada in professional sports. Ask any hockey fan that's gone 25 years without seeing the Stanley Cup come to any of the 7 franchises, the statistical probability being less than 0.07%. You'll know what I mean. Okay. Woo, it's getting dark out here, folks. Okay, well, for those of you that are sticking around, Vera, okay, let me get to your comment right now. I was asking the question, what would you do if you were Prime Minister of Canada? Vera K says, the first thing I would do is force those billionaires that hide their dollars in offshore accounts, make them pay their share of taxes. Well, Vera, you'll be happy to know that my friend Dale Donaldson, has got something to say about that, and it is my Facebook community post of the day tomorrow. So tune in then, 6 o'clock Pacific, Team Tuesday, okay? John Connors, liberals are the only option. However, you don't have to apologize for it, John. Armin Aredo, unelectable, NDP and Greens, sadly. Howard Maurice from Texas. John, I'm happy they took down the Begbie statue in New West. Okay, I'll have to look that one up, John. I don't know that one. Dale Kroom, Intentional Communities, baby. What's up, Calgary? Teresa Dabu, UBC basketball. Oh, Vashi Capellos. Thank you, John Connors. And Kevin Hansen, happy to hear. I have a lot of my sports buddies saying, Eric, how come you're not running here in politics? So I'm going to just give it a shot tonight, Kevin. Hang in there. I'm coming up 1 second. Hindermail Ray, John Mail, Mike Patton, Nelson, British Columbia. John Connors, just like Rap's title, gets an asterisk. What? What do you mean the Rap's title gets an asterisk, John Connors? That's it, buddy. I am challenging you to a sound off here. I'm going to have you on Big E TV. Michael Patton, Eric, I'm biting my tongue right now. That's okay. Mike Patton, you have never said anything that would offend me, man. If you want to say something truthfully, honestly, you go for it, man. I would have nothing but respect. Constantine Bankston, he's not holding his tongue right now, I'm sure. He might be holding something else, maybe a Molson Canadian or something. Boogie will show you, says John Connors. John, is there anything we agree on, man? Rick Gill, all right. All right, Rick Gill, former basketball superstar at University of Victoria and founder of Hoop for Hopes in South Africa. Done so many good things in the community. Rick, great to have you on the show, bro. Lottery Raptors, says John. Manoj from Winnipeg watching. Raptors don't have heart of a champion. Rode Kawhi's coattails. Oh boy, 70 and 72 years old, respectfully. Curtis, how many Canadian-born players on the Capital roster? One. Well, maybe not Canadian-born. I mean, you're getting kind of specific now, Michael. There is one, okay? Yeah, Chris Boucher from Montreal. And if Masai Ujiri, if you're listening, Trey Lyles, he's still available. He's restricted, but you know, do something about that. We'll have two, okay? And then you want to have these guys like Mike Patton, you know, and John Connors making fun of us. John Connors says lottery teams don't get mentions. Oh, that's harsh. That's harsh. Why is it titled World Championship when it's only played in North America, says Mike Patton. Well, there's a little history there, Michael. Used to be called the NBA World Championships. I believe FIFA probably forced their hand on that years ago, maybe 20 years ago, got them to take that world out because there's the World Championships. And I think it was probably coincided with the dream team, you know, of Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, you know, that when they started getting the better partnership between FIBA and the NBA, I believe that's when they agreed, well, we'll call it the NBA Championships, not the NBA World Championships. However, Kyle Lowry is right to say they're the World Championships because by far and away they are the greatest basketball players in the world. There's a few exceptions out there, but a guy like Mirotic, who just signed over there in the Euro League, okay, he's going to make a quarter of what he can make in the NBA just for the pure joy of being the man in the playoffs instead of what happened in Milwaukee where he was basically benched by game 5 and game 6. So there's your answer, okay? So I think they're both correct. It's okay to call them the World Championships. They're not technically the World Championships, but they are the world's best players. It's like the NHL. You can't say there's any other league in the world that it's not the World Championships of hockey. You know, they have the Hockey World Championships, but they're all the guys from all the teams that were the worst teams that didn't make the playoffs, okay? So you tell me, which one do you think has more value, is more worthy of a world championship? And you're talking to a former world championship gold medalist here from the Zen Masters for 4 years. My mates and I, we beat a bunch of ex-NBA players, and we were the reigning world champions for 4 years. And that wasn't just league, baby. That was legit, even recognized by the IOC. So I'm proud about that. All right, Tom Hybeck is on the call. Cheryl Hereniak. Cheryl says, I love your passion, enthusiastic energy for doing what you love to do, Eric. Aww. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you so much. Jarly Jarup enters the conversation. Hey, Jarly. Okay, folks. People tell me that I do this much better when I'm just not ad-libbing, or when I am just ad-libbing. So for my State of the Union address, let's pull this back a bit. I'm going to throw away. Oh, that actually looks. Let me turn that down. Okay. Gotta go, Eric, says Jarly. Okay, Jarly, well, thanks for checking in. Come back and see me again sometime. Okay, you're gonna miss out on this. As Prime Minister of Canada, I will... I don't know if I like this. Maybe I'll move upstairs here. All right, I'm gonna put my campaign hat on. Hey, vote for me, baby. All right, let's go upstairs here. Woo! Oh boy, oh boy. And we'll have fun, 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 till the daddy took the T-bird away. And we'll have fun, 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 till the daddy took the T-bird away. All right, all right. Woo! Woo! All right, sorry about that. All right, let's put this up here. Oh. Nice. All right. I think I'll stand for this. I can't go for that. No. No can do. I can't go for that. Can't go for. No. All right, everybody. Whew. All right. Whew. Dun, 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 dun. Here we go. Here we go. Dun, 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 bum, bum. As Prime Minister of Canada. What would I do? Okay, well, I kind of touched on it through some of the themes today. Number one, I would restore order to resemble what a democracy should look like, okay? Not what it looks like now, as shaped and formed almost exclusively by mega corporations, billionaire, wealthy donors, hijacking our election cycles, leading to the root cause of so many of the problems that we have today. So, number two, I would prioritize urgent calls to action around, everybody knows what I'm going to say first, right? Climate change, climate change. No, not climate change. Not yet, okay? There's a precursor. We're all having this climate change discussion, which is great. I love talking about how we can improve our environmental policies, okay? It's the doing part that we seem to be having so much trouble with, okay? So, first and foremost, it's about electoral reform, okay? We've got to get big money out of politics. We've got to have transparent elections where it's truly the will of the people based on good information, not the propaganda that we're being spoon-fed here, and what's leading to the last five, count them, five premiers of our provinces going conservative, 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 okay? It doesn't make sense in today's day and age where it is so obvious what is going on that people continue to be hoodwinked into voting for policies against their best interest. So, number one, economy, okay? Economy trumps environment, not in the sense of we have to do economy policies at the expense of the environment. We need to find solutions where they go hand in hand, okay? This is where, let's see, on my right would be your left, so on your right, okay, it's very difficult to have policies that almost exclusively benefit corporations, and on the other side, it's hard to vote for if it's environmental issues, but that's the only platform of your entire thing. I get there's a purpose here, right, to help for some leverage over here, but the real solution is winning elections, okay? Winning ridings, becoming the prime minister. That's the solution, okay? That's where I think we need to find some middle ground in between these two extremes, if you catch my drift. So, the root cause of our economic climate today is that we've had this, think of a toilet, you know, Australian would be the other way, spiraling downwards out of, you know, that's basically our real incomes. Okay, from when I was a millennial making $8 an hour, you know, to today where maybe you're making $12 an hour. Okay, I'm not young, folks. We're talking about decades long here. Okay, the price of beer has gone up fourfold, fivefold. Okay, the price of the income from $8 an hour to $12 an hour isn't even 1/5 of that. Okay, so this is what we're dealing with here. Our purchasing power gets less and less and less every year as we continue to have governments that institute policies that benefit corporations at our expense. Am I saying this clearly enough? We're getting some of this? Okay. What we need from an economic standpoint, I'm going to tie some green economy stuff in a minute as well, is the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. Think about it, okay? When I grew up, and Cheryl Horeniuk and Mike Patton and Maurice Toronto and some of these Nelsonites, when we grew up in Nelson, okay, there was lots of little businesses there, okay? And those little businesses they were able to live off of and make a profit off of. And guess what? They reinvested that money back in the economy. And it had this self-perpetuating cycle that gets bigger and bigger. And when the major employer like Kootenai Forest Supply, who my dad worked for, and I believe Maurice Toronto's dad worked for, when it got shut down, and that was the economic driver in the community, instead of that town of Nelson closing down, it's kind of town, city, 10,000 is officially the status, and it's always been kind of around that 10,000 mark. So it's a big town, small city. It's a big fish in a small pond in the Kootenays for sure, Nelson. But the point is that the economy did not die, okay? Thanks to people like my father and Gerald Roddering and guys like that, the mayor of Nelson, you know, they made connections with Japan, and they had these things where they would bring a lot of students in. They would turn their David Thompson University, okay, they would turn it into colleges and vocational schools. They used tourism, and a lot of hippies end up going to Nelson, and a lot of like artistic people. And next thing you know, this is a thriving small community, the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. Okay, what happens when a Walmart and an Amazon come into that market? People are like, oh, we can get lots of stuff for less, and more selection, and faster, and quicker, and free delivery, and maybe a drone will drop it off. How cool is that? But the money that is sucked out of your pocket doesn't stay in the community. It goes, guess what? To Jeff Bezos and the Walmart family, whatever their name is, Waltons. Don't forget the movie industry. Roxanne! That's right. Mike Patton wants to remind you that the movie industry is alive and well in Nelson, and it will always be immortalized by Sergeant de Bourgeois' story of Bo Derek and Steve Martin and that famous movie Roxanne. Which means, and if you ever go to Nelson, you got to visit the fire hall there, because that's where the movie was filmed, much of it, and it's a very cool building. I've actually burned down in that where they used to hang out there, the firemen back in the day. All right, okay, so where are we at here? Economy, and last but not least, we need to just get our experts to figure it out, okay? We have some of the greatest universities in the world. University of British Columbia, University of Toronto, many others, okay? We have the bright minds, the bright economists, the futurists, right? To design our Canadian economy that's gonna fire on all cylinders. It's not gonna be centrally planned like China's is, which is kicking everyone's ass right now, but it's going to be similar in that it will have some kind of coherent plan that looks to be as efficient as possible. And when John Peckman, the former commissioner of the Competition Bureau, has to step down in his post last fall because he said that it's a joke. Our competition laws in Canada no longer are there to protect competition and help the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. Instead, they're there to help large corporations. Well, guess what? Woo, 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 woo. Sound the alarm, folks. We have got a problem. So my point is that right now, what's holding us back more than anything is special interest groups. Take oil and gas, for example. There's lots of clean energies that we could go towards, but we get held back by special interest groups of the past that fund our governments and our election campaigns. If you've noticed the Kinder Morgan pipeline and all the propaganda that we've been fed to try to convince us that that's in our best interest, and it's massive oil and gas dollars that are going to try to brainwash you into thinking of something that's not in your best interest. Okay, come over here where it's cleaner and brighter and better for everybody. When Walmart came to Nelson, downtown diversified, each store is unique and cater to many needs. Diversification in Nelson in a nutshell. That is true, Michael, and it goes a little bit against my point, so I will counter your point with not every city in the universe is as beautiful as Nelson, okay? Last time I checked, people said Nelson, it's the bomb, okay? So Nelson was able to absorb a Walmart and still thrive with other small businesses. I agree to some extent. I'm sure business owners would say that it still takes a cut of their business in different sectors. However, not everywhere is Nelson, so touche. All right, next. The environment, okay? So environment needs to be tied to economic growth. This is a great example of a green industry where we can benefit, okay, in certain sectors. Did I write them down? Oh, yeah. Man, oh, man. Measure results. Okay, Michael, thanks, buddy. Yeah, so the environment we need to tie to economic growth, and we need to, I think I started to touch on some of these issues already. Something that's measurable, though. We need to use the environment. We do have measuring sticks that don't measure, politicians like, guess who? Well, we are going to, buy a pipeline, yes, but we are going to put every dollar spent on that pipeline into green shit coming out of your ass, as far as I'm concerned. Like, what a joke to say that, okay? We're getting way too much rhetoric. We're not seeing the results. Again, that gal from our Environment Canada had to step down, or was about to step down, and she said nothing has been done. It's she feels like it's been a failure for her. The CBC, I can see they've got some great reporting going on. The anchor people are way better than I am. I can almost see that they almost feel like they got to sell their soul sometimes to have to report things in a way where they're like saying them, but they're like, their heart is just being killed. And that's why I like Andrew Cohen so much. He's on there with that Chantal Hébert is probably our two leading pundits, in Canada. And in fact, Andrew Cohen was able to last federal election saying, I'm friggin' voting NDP and fuck you guys. This the corporate company that he works for in Toronto, was it the National Post, the Global Mail? I'm not sure, but it's a large corporation kind of company. And he was so just disgusted that after everything Stephen Harper did to ruin our country, how they could come out on the election day and everyone hating on Harper saying we endorse Stephen Harper. So good on you, Andrew Cohen. We'll give you a high five, even more than a Big E TV shout out there. Okay, and let's make part of our environmental discussion part of our First Nations discussion. Okay, so that's my next order of business, is to make sure that the First Nations people of our world get what's coming to them, and that is a lot. Okay, and it's incredibly ironic how when you look at the real protectors of our environment, okay, that are people that have been on our side the whole time protecting our environmental interests. Often it's the First Nations people of our land. We should be deeply in debt to them, not only for that, but for everything that they have done for Canada and the way that they were, living in Canadian soil, what was Canadian soil, on their lands in such a sustainable, environmentally friendly way. It's incredible. We could have learned so much from them, but instead, I think what came. Where we're at. So I would say that, in terms of First Nations issues, that we got to put our money where our mouths are. Okay, we have to think about First Nations reconciliation and start having developing partnerships with First Nations people, hear their story. We've heard some of their pain, Okay, I think the Liberals have done a few things there, certainly more than the Tories. I'll certainly give them credit there. But at the end of the day, when Jody Wilson-Raybould has to step down from her position as the Minister of, or the Justice Minister of our lands, because she has no confidence in our government, okay, there's a very good reason. And along with like First Nations are groups like the LGBTQ community and religious groups. It's almost in the same conversation there. Okay, New Canadians is another group. Okay, these are all, you could call them special interest groups, but guess what? Unlike special interests, which are corporations that don't have a heart and they can't feel or give an S about anything but P, special interest groups are people, human beings. What do they want? Well, they basically just want to have equal rights like everybody else. What's so terrible about that? Okay, they don't want to feel persecuted, or if they want to demonstrate the way that they want to, you know, I mean, it really has this, it's really an attitude, I think. It's about like, stop judging others, okay? And this is what I don't like about religions. They often are saying like, don't be like that, don't be like that, don't just be like us, okay? Come on, folks. I think in 2019, we should be smarter than that. I love spirituality. I'm a deeply spiritual person. But when you think about it, let's just have an honest conversation. What are religions, okay? Religions are simply how spirituality is interpreted, okay, by a particular society in a geographical part of the world originally for the times that it was, you know, for that time. If you started a religion today, I don't think that they would write the Bible, for example, like they wrote it before, the Quran. So, freedom of expression is incredibly important, but it comes with a caveat, okay? And that's, don't impose your will on others, okay? Your shit stinks too, is what my old coach Bruce Enns used to say. And when you think about it, there's some truth to that. And when we talk about First Nations issues, LGBTQ issues, or LGBTQI2-R issues, you know, with Two-Spirit, and we talk about New Canadian issues, okay, these are all people issues, and if I sound like I'm pandering to that group, then guilty as charged, okay? Yes, people are my target market. So if I was Prime Minister of Canada, to get there, I would have a platform that wasn't based on right and left, okay? It would be based on someone that had an upbringing from a strong democratic socialist upbringing to a private sector, entrepreneurial, pro-business guy virtually my entire professional life, to the point where I am today, where we just need balance in this world. We need balance between the economy and the environment. We need balance between freedom of speech and overstepping your boundaries. And we need balance between economic, what do you call that, when you redistribution of wealth, you know, I mean, that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, now, I think this has been a long show, but I'm getting there. I'm almost down to the, okay, so system reform. Okay, where do we need to reform our system? Education and the amount of misinformation. Okay, what is information? What is advertisements? Right now, the lines are blurred. 2, corporate finance. Okay, laws are written right now to protect corporations. Even the CBC, when they're reporting on these issues, they have a hard time explaining the issues when they have to basically say, well, Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg, they didn't show up for their House of Commons thing, but you know what? Even if they were charged, Facebook, we can't really do anything. The ways our laws are written, we would basically just slap them on the wrist and say, do a better job next time. Okay there, Bella, because we're Canadian and we want to be friendly to everybody. No. We must rewrite our corporate laws to reflect protecting us, not screwing us. And of course, the Supreme Court of Canada, where I can't believe we have not investigated one simple truth. How is it that the majority of judges on the Supreme Court of Canada were appointed under one Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, over a 10-year period all happening within that time frame, okay? We've never investigated that. We've never asked questions about that. It's just like, why in our Supreme Court of Canada, why are we not talking about the fact that we had the biggest discussion of our lifetime going back to self-financing through the Bank of Canada, instead of, for some reason, the other Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau, in 1974 chose to, instead of lend money to ourselves through our Bank of Canada, externally borrow money at 2, 3, 4 times the rate so that corporations can profit at our expense. And I'm going to have a friend of mine, Alan Lowry, who's going to come on the show, and he's going to talk about that on another future episode. So stay tuned for that. Okay, and before I leave you, one more thing. If I was the Prime Minister of Canada, and this is the big one, folks, okay? Are you writing this down? The biggest thing to hit our world since, I don't know, Jesus Christ, Allah, the prophet, I'm not going to say the prophet's name because that group doesn't appreciate using that word out loud, and so I respect that. Okay, so the biggest thing to hit our planet since, can we say Buddha? Can we all agree on Buddha? He's a big, jovial, overweight guy that looks like, you know, he's very non-judgmental, and like Buddha's maybe a figure. Okay, so the biggest thing since Buddha, series of events that happened almost like out of a real-life Matrix movie. You know, remember the Matrix? Okay, unbelievable series of events. First of all, Edward Snowden, okay, when he captured all those secrets from the U.S., was considered a traitor, turns out to be a hero, and he uncovered things like the PRISM surveillance system, where they found out in the U.S. and other countries, I'm guessing, do this, where they basically have the ability to listen in and watch everything that we're doing. Okay, now this is like 20 years ago, right? Like I can't remember when he left. He left after 9/11, but I think it was, I can't remember what year that was. The Panama Papers might have been part of that purge as well. But the Panama Papers were massive. They basically showed the degree that snow washing was happening in Canada. And what was that called? Island of Man or something? It was like this tax avoidance scheme that was found out thanks to the Panama Papers. Now, these are just random series of events, folks, that happened over the last decade or so. Chris Wylie, okay? Chris Wylie, we know all too well here in Vancouver. He's from neighboring Victoria, was working in the Cambridge Analytica offices here in Vancouver, ended up going to the Guardian newspaper in the UK, Channel 4 News over there. They did an expose. They basically blew open the Cambridge Analytica scheme, which turned out to be deeply implicated into the 2016 US election, as well as Brexit, as well as a lot of stuff that happened, I'm sure, here in Canada. They boasted about it on camera, that they can basically control and win elections just based on the system that big data analytics has in our world today, that takes massive amounts of information from all of us every day, compiles psychoprofiles, and then is able to cut those up and kind of categorize us into different beings, and then run those through algorithms that then in turn are able to tell you who your target market is, and then use that target market to shoot out information at them that's going to freak the bejesus out of you, right? And gather back all that information back about them towards winning elections, winning power, and large corporations, wealthy donors taking over our democracies. That's the world we live in. Okay. Oh my goodness. So remember, at the end of that last Matrix movie, okay? Remember when Carrie-Anne Moss from Victoria, BC, Keanu Reeves, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Nanaj, 2 Canadians go to save the planet, right? They head over to whatever the mainframe is, and we're the, okay? That's us. That's Edward Snowden. That's Chris Wylie. These guys got in the Matrix, okay? They got in, they pulled a Keanu. They got in there, the real life Matrix. They pulled out information, and they gave us a glimpse of what's really happening here. Because what's really happening here is that we live in the Matrix. We're given a choice between Democrats and conservatives in Canada. We're given a choice between Democrats and Republicans in the US, between liberals and conservatives in Canada. All four parties are bought and paid for by billionaire donors and corporations that have their best interest at heart at our expense, okay? We need to get out of the matrix. We need to get out of the matrix by middle of October. So do what you can with what you got, how things are now, and I will see you back here tomorrow on Big E TV, Teen Tuesday, 6 o'clock Pacific. Hope to give you something to think about. Thanks for joining me, everybody, on this special Monday night. And Michael Patton says, thanks, Eric. Enjoyable as always. Very British thing to say, Mike. Thanks, buddy. Take care, you guys. Love you. Bye-bye.